Chad Kempt of Fast Computers joins us this week to share his insights on a boatload of news from HP and Lenovo, as well as the secrets of cross-selling, plus a special guest interview with CJ Arlotta of CJ Media Solutions on PR for MSPs. It's ChannelPro Weekly number 251, Raccoon Buffet. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode number 251. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine program for folks out there like you. And when I say like you, who are you? Well, you know who you are, but who you are isn't necessarily quite as important as what you do. And if you are a VAR, an MSP, which stands for managed services provider. So if you didn't know what MSP stood for, you're probably not in the right space. But you could also be an IT consultant. You could be a managed security services provider. You could be all of those things. But the general gist is if you work with technology with other businesses and implement solutions or guide them to solutions or help secure them or whatever, that means you are in the right place. Welcome to you, one and all. Joining me this week and most weeks here is the Superman of the IT channel. That's right, Rich. We're going superheroes this week. Please welcome executive editor Rich Freeman.
The Clark Kent of the channel, or the Superman or both?
I guess when you're in front of your laptop, you're Superman, and when you're not, you're Clark Kent. Is that how it works? But I think you wear the glasses both either way, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No, so, I'll take either one, actually.
So you're pretty recognizable as your superhero doppelganger, even when you're in your normal life.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Nobody recognizes me when I'm in the superhero mode, basically. It's just when I'm in Clark Kent mode.
Fantastic. Well, great to have you here. We'll talk about New Year's in a second, but I want to go ahead and introduce our fantastic guest that we have this week. I'm excited to have him back. He started Fast Computers in 1998, which focused on doing like break fix project work before transitioning to managed services in 2005. He's very active in the managed services community. He sat on the Datto advisory board. He sat on the ASCII advisory council. He also attends and presents at several industry events throughout North America. Please welcome the awesome Chad Kempt. Welcome, Chad.
Hey, thanks so much, Matt. Really appreciate you guys having me here. Great to be back.
Great to have you back on the show. It's been a while. So, I mean, we'll go ahead and just kind of talk about what it is. This is the first episode of 2023. So how was your New Year's?
Oh, New Year's is great. I have a toddler. I have one daughter, and we just stayed home and we pretended it was midnight a little early. Got out the I don't know, some sparkling juice or something like that, and we had some cookies and did the New Year's thing. And it's if you have kids, it's great watching them. It's actually sometimes more fun to watch them having fun than it is to do it yourself, because it's the first time sometimes for things, and they just get so excited, and you just kind of feed off of that, and I love it. So that's what we do.
Awesome. That sounds like fun. Rich, what did you do to ring in the new year?
I always do pretty much the same thing. I hope this doesn't sound like I'm showing off, but I'm broadcasting from my home and home office right now, and people watching can over my shoulder get just a little glimpse of the living room area. And there's a big window there with a view of the Space Needle here in Seattle. I can't see the whole thing, but I can see like the top third of it. And every New Year's Eve in Seattle, there's this big fireworks show at the Space Needle, which I can watch from my living room. So that's what I did this year. I do that everywhere, and it's a lot of fun. They did a very nice job this year. Sometimes weather gets in the way and they can't do it, or you can barely see it. But good clear weather and a very nice fireworks show.
Well, awesome. Sounds like everybody had a good time and a lot of fun. That's what we always like to see and hear. So Chad, it's great to have you back on the show. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about you, for those who didn't catch you in the past episode. Tell us a little bit more about you, a little bit more about your business.
Yeah, sure. So as you covered a lot of the high level version of it, but basically I have a technical background. So I was the guy that started with the technical side of it and kind of figured out the business part as I went. I've had lots of time to do that, luckily. And I must say I'm much better at that in 2023 than I was in 1998 by leaps and bounds. And basically, I've joked, and this isn't, I don't know a lot about making elevator buttons, but I use this as an analogy. If I wanted to do the same thing every day when I came to work, I would make elevator buttons, and I don't. So, what we're doing now looks a lot different than 5 years ago. It's unrecognizable from 20 years ago. And even 10 years ago, it's leaps and bounds different. And I think that at the beginning of the year, I like to reflect on, what we did really well last year, what things are kind of dying out, and focus on where we're going. And, to that extent, we're still seeing some of the same stuff we've seen for years, server refreshes and stuff, but we have a lot of this cloud thing, the working from home, the hybrid, the conversations that started as a result of the pandemic have continued. Do they need an office? Do they need an office as big? Do they, are they hiring all over the place? What are the security implications? We have clients hiring in different countries now. That's created some challenges. So yeah, we basically are focused on, managed IT with a focus on network security and data protection. I figure if we can't protect your data, then we have no business doing anything. And that's sort of always been our key focus.
Very interesting. And so so you said you said you started with the technical background and kind of worked into the business side. What were you doing as far as the technical background? Were you working for a company, or were you?
Oh yeah. So I started the business pretty young, and so I did some contracts along the way in the early years where I'd contract with some large corps and do some stints, and that gave me some more exposure to how large organizations do things. But even in the early years, we were doing, you mentioned break fix and project work. Company needs all new computers and a server refresh, so we'd go in. But back then there was no concept of recurring revenue or anything. It was like we sold them a bunch of hardware and some services to go along with it. And now, if you track that along, obviously it was probably around 2005, 2006, like you mentioned there, where we actually started doing this managed services. And I'll be honest, it was a little rough at first. We did block hours and we did some per device stuff. We just basically tried things. And if it didn't work, then we just, didn't do that anymore and went and did something different. And that's gotten us to where we are now. And like I said, even I mentioned the hybrid thing, even us, I mean, at the end of 2019, we had moved into a new office in 2019. We had a couple thousand square feet, built a big boardroom, all this stuff, tech bullpen. And then in the start of 2020, of course, I sent everybody home. And now at this point, here we are a few years later, whatever, I have 2 people working in that office. Everybody else works remotely, myself included. Rich, you mentioned, you're working from your home office there. So am I. I love it. It's for me, it's great on many levels. And so I try to enable my staff to do the same thing. But we do still have a place of business. It's just more of a skeleton crew. So.
Wow. Interesting. So what are some of the big lessons that you learned kind of transitioning in from this kind of project kind of mentality into managed services? Like, what were some of the other things that you tried that didn't work, or lessons that you learned along the way?
Yeah. So, well, there's a couple things. So like one of the really basic principles is, you can't care more about the customer's stuff than the customer cares. And so that isn't to say that you shouldn't do a good job with anything you're engaged to do. But, if you have a customer that just doesn't value their IT and they look at it as just like an expense, if you don't want to go full managed services and nothing else, and there's nothing wrong with that, there's nothing wrong with keeping some of those customers around and engaging them for the odd refresh here or there. But you just can't be looking at it the same way you're going to look at one of those clients that are more of a partner. And so we stopped trying to do that. It's like a round peg in a square hole. I would try to force those people into some kind of agreement, just to make it work. And it never worked well. So now if we choose to engage clients that have differing philosophies on managed IT, we just make sure that we draw a line and we know where the line is. That would probably be the biggest one. But the other one was bouncing around per device. Was a problem for us, because then we'd have customers trying to exclude certain devices. So we then moved to more per user, which isn't without its own set of issues, but with per user, we could then lump multiple devices in. And, it's kind of been an ongoing thing. We're always tweaking it every couple of years. We have our boilerplate template, and we have an appendix where we list out all the things that are covered for that particular agreement. And I can't say anything's perfect, but I figure if I do better tomorrow than I did today, then I'm in the right direction.
Chad, before we move on into the week's news, there's something I wanted to ask you about, because Matt mentioned in his introduction review that you're on the Datto Partner Advisory Council. And it occurs to me, I don't know that I've ever talked to anyone about how they got onto, I know plenty of people who are on one or more partner advisory boards for vendors. And I assume sometimes the way that comes together is there's an open seat and somebody calls you up and says, hey, would you be interested in doing this? But I mean, is that how it worked for you? Do you have any thoughts about how somebody who's wondering, how do I get on the partner advisory board, can do that?
Yeah, so the Datto one was a little bit a little bit different. Probably not the best example. I don't mind sharing exactly what happened, but I kind of just showed up and didn't leave. That's how that one worked. I was invited as we were growing fairly fast as a data partner. We're a top tier partner, Blue Diamond or whatever it's called these days. But back then it was elite. We were one of the elite partners. And I was essentially invited to the Data HQ to go meet everybody and whatever. And they timed it during an advisory board meeting to which I was invited as a guest. And then I just didn't leave, basically. So that is apparently one valid approach. I would prefer if people didn't say I'm doing this because Chad said it worked. But apparently if you show up and just don't go anywhere, that is a valid approach. The other approaches that have worked for me with other groups is, certainly if you're doing something to attract attention, you're going to get called and you're going to get asked. Being really involved in the community of said vendor, helping other people that are, if the vendor has their own community forums or the vendor has some sort of, whether it's Discord or forums or sounding dated or mailing lists, whatever they've got, if you're very active and involved in that, the vendors are generally going to see that and they're going to appreciate that and they're going to want your feedback. Obviously a positive attitude approach helps. No one wants someone that just complains with complaining for the sake of complaining doesn't help anybody. But saying, hey, it'd be much better if we did this, while it is a complaint, is very helpful. And so I would advise that when you're posting online, whether it's, again, Reddit, I don't know all the places, but online, all the different places, the vendors are watching. So if you're on there just trashing them because you had a bad experience, you're not going to get invited to anything. I'm not saying you need to go out there and just post all these flowered up comments either, because that's not helpful either. Constructive criticism directed in the right way at the right time to the right people is really what gets the most action, I find.
Very interesting. So just show up and don't leave. I like that. It's pretty good. I'll have to try that next time. And before we move on, I for those who are watching, you've got this kind of background that's got snow and it's got deer in the background, but before we started and before we got on air, you said that's like your backyard. Is that true?
Yeah, remember I said I like working from home. Rich may have the Seattle needle thing there, but I've got deer and turkey and coyotes. We don't really like them as much, but we've got all kinds of things, and they just wander by. I mean, I don't know if this is a bit much for. Hopefully, there's no real vegans on here, but I have this raccoon, and when I built the house, he was kind of skinny. And now he's really fat because what he does is the window wells, the mice and frogs fall in the window well and they can't get out. And I've tried rescuing them. They don't want to be rescued. They just want to live in there, whatever. So he walks by and I have him on the cameras. He walks around the house and he just looks in like he's at a buffet. And he just reaches in and grabs a couple and then, goes off and munches on them. And I swear this raccoon is 3 times the size he was previously. And at some point, I'm thinking he may not move. He may just lay there and just reach in and eat and give up on. But yeah, anyway, it's quite comical to me. We get possums. I love possums. They eat a lot of ticks. But yeah, anyway, I live in a forest. I basically live in a forest. I built my house in the middle of a forest and I love it and I highly recommend it as long as you're not afraid of bugs and the dark. It gets dark at nighttime here. It's dark.
So what part of the country are you in? Because it snows, so you're obviously a little bit more northern.
Southern Ontario. I'm in Canada. I'm in Southern Ontario.
Oh, you're in Canada. Oh, okay, interesting. So
an hour and a half from Toronto.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, so I'm sure you are used to the snow then.
Well, the strangest thing, the weather has just been absolutely bonkers this year. And in the last, it continues to get warmer. I'm not making statements about climate change or anything like that. But the fact is, when I was a little kid, we used to go trick-or-treating on Halloween in snowsuits because it was snow. And now Christmas rolls around and we go, are we going to have a white Christmas? And then, we get this blizzard February, March, where it's just, end of the world, blizzardy conditions, but that's about it. And like it goes, the temperature is all over the place. It's really bad because the ground it's supposed to be frozen, but then it kind of thaws a little bit. Then it rains a lot, but it can't drain. The sun doesn't come out, so it doesn't dry up, and you end up with flooding and all these problems. It's not really great.
Yeah, I have noticed too. I remember winter starting a lot earlier. I live in a northern area too, not quite as north as you, but I do remember that like this as a kid, November and December had a lot more snow than it does now. But now it's like it seems like more January, February is like when you get all the massive snowfall.
Snowmobiles are the other thing. Like they used to be really popular when I was a kid. A lot of people had snowmobiles. Nobody has snowmobiles here unless they live on a trailer that they drive up north to the cottage for the weekend or whatever, because there's just no point. You're using it for, it's debatable that, I have a snowblower and my tractor has like a plow thing on it. But even that, like, I only use it a few times a year. It's just that when it happens, not having it is not
great. Right. Absolutely. I know the feeling. Well, awesome. Well, glad to have you here. We've got a great show ahead. I'll just kind of preview some of the things we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about some news from HP and Lenovo, some hardware stuff, and some other kind of things with them. We're going to talk about a story about cross-selling, which I think will be pretty interesting. We've got a really interesting interview coming up with CJ Arlotta. He's with a PR firm that he owns. We're going to be talking about PR and some of that kind of stuff. Really, really fascinating interview that we recorded that a little earlier, but we're going to put that in there. That'll be a lot of fun. It'll also be fun because Chad goes into his echo chamber for that interview as well, so that'll be interesting as well. We'll talk about that later on. But yeah, a lot of good stuff ahead. So why don't we go ahead and just dive in, Rich? So HP has already kicked off the year with some product announcements. I guess it's the CES time of year. So we're going to be talking a little bit about hardware the next few weeks, I'm sure. What does HP have in store, Rich?
Yeah, this is your kind of week on the show here, Matt, because it's a short week for just about everybody. There really isn't a lot of news, a lot going on in the industry, but CES is happening in Las Vegas as we speak right now. And so there has been a ton of hardware news this week. And I'll say up front, I was only able to cover I was only able to cover part of the hardware announcements from two vendors in particular that we'll be talking about here, HP and Lenovo. So anyone out there who is like a big Dell fan or an Acer fan, they had a huge set of announcements as well that I just wasn't able to get around to covering as of when we're recording this, at least. So, but we'll talk a little bit about HP and then Lenovo. So. A lot of the products that I kind of focused in on, in particular from HP, are laptops. There are some all-in-ones that they announced this year, as did Lenovo. But a lot of laptops, a lot of hardware for hybrid workers, as you would expect. Hybrid work, we all believe, is here to stay. The first and in some ways most interesting product HP announced this year is a new addition to their Dragonfly family. And it's I'm looking for the name here. It's the Dragonfly Pro, and it is specifically designed for freelancers. And you hear that or read that and think, well, do freelancers have specific enough needs to need a device that has been kind of tailored to those specific requirements? I think maybe the best way to think about this, because this is certainly not how HP wanted to position it, but I've got to believe this is what they're thinking, is that when you think about freelancers, you're kind of thinking about creative people who do video processing and editing and recording and design work and so on. And that market, architecture, construction, that market is kind of owned by Apple right now. And I think what HP is looking for is something to offer to kind of rival that the Apple laptops that freelancers, creatives, et cetera, out there have. So they've created a device that they have optimized around processing power so that you can do some of that intense video related and design related work. Long battery life, because you're a hybrid worker, you're going to be in Zoom and Teams a lot, high definition video, really good solid audio. And then another thing that they have identified or are found in this market is that the freelancers we're talking about, they're interested in what they do with laptops. They're not interested all that much in the laptops themselves. They don't want to spend a lot of time researching their options. They want to keep it kind of simple. And so basically they have, HP has sort of simplified the SKUs and the purchasing process to just kind of make it very easy to figure out, yep, that's the one for me, and go ahead and buy it. So this is a 14-inch device, standard clamshell kind of notebook design, AMD Ryzen 7 processors, 16 hours of battery life, a 5-megapixel infrared camera, Bang & Olufsen audio. There is also a Chromebook version of this device, which runs on Intel processors, has an 8-megapixel webcam, 1200 nit display. So HP says this is the brightest touchscreen in Chromebooks available right now. This is interesting to me. So I attended an HP event last summer in which they talked about how combining services with the hardware that they sell is a big part of their competitive strategy going forward. And we've seen that around things like toner replenishment and so on. I think this is the first time that I've seen something quite like this from HP. So when you get one of these Dragonfly Pro or Pro Chromebook devices, it comes with, out of the box, no extra charge, one-touch access to what HP is calling 24/7 live concierge support. So essentially there's a button on the keyboard, you press it, I don't know how long you might wind up waiting, but you will get connected directly to free technical support. And I assume, the range of what they can and will do for you is limited. There are paid plans that they point out that you can get if you really want total device protection. But here's a support service from the manufacturer, easy to access, included with the device at no extra charge, which is kind of interesting. How much do these devices cost? We don't know. They're coming out in the spring. HP has not announced prices yet, so that will kind of factor into how big a value all of that is. Some other laptops for the hybrid workforce. There's a device called the Dragonfly G4. There's the EliteBook 1040 G10. The Elite X360 1040 G10. The sort of hybrid work related innovation that's present in all of these devices is that these machines are capable of accepting video input from two sources, and either there's a technology that HP calls fusion that can just combine these two streams into one image that is enhanced, clearer, better because you're getting more input. Or you can look simultaneously, stream simultaneously, picture in picture, side by side, dual images through this one machine. And to that point, there's actually an interesting feature on these devices called Auto Camera Select. So when I'm working at my desk here at home, I've got like a 28-inch monitor, and then next to it as a second screen, I've got my 15-inch laptop, and there's a camera built into the laptop. There's a webcam on top of the display. If I was using one of these HP devices and I switched my attention while we're talking now from the webcam to the laptop camera off to my right, the system would automatically detect that my angle of vision, that my head had moved, and it would switch the camera shot automatically so that the other camera is now the one that is showing my image to folks, which is kind of interesting. There are some other consumer PCs, 14-inch, 15.6-inch products that we won't go into particularly. I mentioned there are some all-in-ones. We won't go into that. But one interesting sort of theme in all of these devices. So HP has made a huge point of sustainability and recycled materials and really sort of lightening their environmental impact for years now. And they happen to mention in their press release this week, they have used more than 1 billion with a B pounds of recycled materials in their products just since 2019. But this is the first time I've seen them start to use recycled food products in their system. So there is an eco edition of this new 14-inch laptop I was alluding to before. And the bottom cover, the bottom panel on that device is partially made from recycled cooking oil. And you just got to wonder if that baby heats up, does it start smelling like popcorn or something in your office? And then the all-in-ones I guess the bezel around the or the finish on the device is partly made from recycled coffee grounds. There's a sort of speckled kind of effect that they have, and I'm sure you would never know. You're looking at, Rich Freeman's old coffee grounds. It just looks nice, but that very creative use of recycled materials in these devices. And then last thing I'll highlight, just because HP spent over like $3.3 billion last year to purchase Poly, the folks who do all sorts of audio visual and phones and meeting devices and so on. This is one of, if not the first Poly devices that I've seen since that deal closed late-ish last year. So they introduced something called the Poly Voyager Free 60. This is a wireless set of earbuds. They look cool. They do a lot of the things earbuds do. The distinctive thing about this product, though, is that it comes with what Poly calls a smart charging case. So there's actually an OLED you can plug into the seat back in front of you and then wirelessly stream audio from the movie you're watching into your earbuds, which is kind of a cool thing too. So that there's a bunch of other stuff that HP announced, but those are some relevant highlights.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot to go through. And there's a lot here to discuss. I'm seeing a couple themes. So, and then Chad, I'm gonna throw it over to you to kind of give some of your opinions on some of the hardware. But some of the themes I'm seeing is a continued focus on improving the conferencing experience on these different devices. So I'm seeing a lot of emphasis put on webcams, audio systems, microphones specifically. So I'm seeing that the Pro version is interesting. They're two very. They look. I mean, honestly, it's like there's a Chromebook version. I'm going to ask you about Chromebooks in a second, Chad. I'm curious how much of your business is around.
We're not really a fan of the whole Chrome. We're a Microsoft shop, so we're all in on 365 and whatnot. I think the Chromebooks really fit in well with the people that are doing the whole Google Workspace thing and building entire practices around it. And there's probably lots of value there, but staying in my lane on that, the 365 is our thing. So we're very interested in the Windows products. And to that point, the Dragonfly stuff from HP, which we're talking about now. Dell has the XPS line. Lenovo has changed their lines. It's very interesting to me because several years back, we basically had two product lines, three if you count the gaming stuff. We had the really cheap consumer stuff that anybody in my space would cringe if somebody bought, and then we had the business grade stuff that cost a lot more money. For things you couldn't see, better build quality, all that sort of stuff, and security features. And so this prosumer thing, which I will agree with, I think it was Rich that you said something, or maybe it was Matt, about Apple it was Rich, about Apple kind of having this sort of prosumer market share. And they're kind of forcing the PC manufacturers to get their game up. A good example is like the speakers. If any of you have ever listened to like a MacBook Pro playing music just on the built-in stuff, and then compared it to like most PCs outside of these crazy gaming PCs, it's pretty horrible. And I mean, they're not great. They don't have a lot of room to work in any of these chassis, but Apple's managed to make it work. So now you see things like you were saying, the Bang & Olufsen sound system that's in this Dragonfly. I think there's a focus being put on things we just never saw before. The webcam's a good example. Show me a computer from 3 or 4 years ago with a half-decent webcam. Even the high-end enterprise stuff had pretty mediocre webcams. And anyway, we're seeing a huge improvement there. I agree. Some of the gimmicky features, I don't know. I say for every 10, you got to try. They got to try. But every 10 features that come out, maybe one of them I see stick around and the other ones kind of, go away. This Fusion, I think it was called there, that I thought was very interesting. A lot of times you're presenting, a webinar or something like that, being able to, Teams has a mode now where you can kind of put yourself in the corner of a PowerPoint, but to be able to have an actual item that you're showing while you're in the thing without having a really complicated, streaming setup, I think is really, really neat.
Yeah, definitely some interesting features. And again, focused a lot on presentation, conferencing, video conferencing, really kind of embracing that whole like remote work era that we're kind of in right now. There's so much else. There was the Voyager Free.
There was one thing I wanted to add, if you don't mind, Matt, about
no, go ahead. I'm just
Rich missed it. They've announced some new monitors And you know, I think monitors are often overlooked because they're not as exciting to talk about. But you know, in the last couple of years, we've been able to get rid of docks, replace them with USB-C monitors that have webcams built in and everything else. And the biggest problem we've seen is that a lot of the higher end business ones aren't very affordable. So they announced, I think it's called the E45, which is an ultra wide panel that seems like it's going to be, they didn't announce pricing, but I think it's going to come in a lot lower than what I would recommend today, which would be the HP Z40C, which is a gorgeous ultra wide, and it still is a better screen, but the price tag in Canada, the price tag's north of $2,000 for the monitor, and that's a lot more than a lot of people are willing to spend.
Yeah,
that product is the E45C G5. It is a 45-inch, as HP puts it, super ultra wide dual QHD, excuse me, curved monitor. So they're saying it's the equivalent of two 24-inch QHD monitors, but no, you know, border down the middle.
Which is the Z40, which they announced, I think that's like a last year thing. It's the same monitor, but it's a little taller. It's got more pixels in height. But if you have to pay 2 or 2.5 times as much money for it, a lot of people are going to be more than happy with having the dual 27s with no line in the middle. It's still curved. It's got everything. I can't imagine it's going to have a super high price tag. I think that's going to be a big seller.
Yeah, for sure. Lots of good stuff. Rich, I know we didn't touch too much on the gaming PCs, but they did announce a couple Omen gaming laptops as well. 13th gen Intel Core i9 processors and NVIDIA graphics. $1,700 and up. Looks pretty interesting. Did you want to touch on the first their cloud gaming service, the Omen Gaming Hub? Did they talk about what that's all about?
I can tell you a little bit about it. I was going to ask you about that because I'm just not a big gamer, folks. So I don't really know how significant this is. But the Omen is like the big, or one of the big gaming brands at HP. So most of their gaming hardware is Omen branded. But this is the first time HP has had a cloud gaming service, and it's called the Omen Gaming Hub. It at launch will provide access to over 1,450 titles. They say that they say they're the first Windows PC manufacturer to have a cloud gaming service like this that is integrated with NVIDIA GeForce Now, which is something I don't know very much about, but they felt it was something worth kind of calling out there. So that's about as much as I know about the Omen Gaming Hub. But it is, I mean, it's a bit of a depart. Omen has been, to my knowledge, an almost entirely hardware-based brand up until this point, and now they're kind of pivoting a little bit. You know, and we were talking about services before. Here's another kind of service extension for HP.
Yeah, interesting. So GeForce Now is like and it gives you the ability to run games in NVIDIA's cloud, so you don't have to have any like 3D hardware or massive gaming hardware on your machine. You're running it in a cloud, and it's streaming the picture to your computer, basically. But I'm curious, is this included? Like, they're giving you...
It's going to be a build service, I imagine.
I have to imagine it would be some kind of service. Yeah,
it seems like a pretty, honestly, it's with gaming PCs, you know, and a really high-end gaming PC is going to set you back over $5,000 or $6,000 now if you really build it up. Being able to access something on a normal PC for, you know, a negligible monthly fee for the masses, I think is a really neat thing. I think anyone still really competitive or really serious about it is going to want less latency, and they're going to want their own hardware. Obviously, you can build a PC, in case, just so I don't get roasted with the people listening. Yes, you can build a gaming PC, I'm sure, for much below $5,000 or $6,000. But if you start adding like the 4090 is an almost $2,000 video card, the flagship CPUs are $1,000. MSI's godlike motherboard is like $1,500. If you start using all flagship stuff, it's very hard not to go over that number. And, you know, like I said, at the end of the day, these services are providing accessibility that just wasn't there previously. So I don't personally use any of these services, but I'm very happy to see they exist, because I think, you know, I think there's a lot of people out there just can't justify the spend on the system.
Yeah, well said. Well said. So yeah, a lot of stuff from HP. We'll put a link to this story in the show notes for this episode 251. So go to channelpronetwork.com, find the show sheet for this episode, or you can open up the description area on your phone. We'll put the links in there. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, hit the like, all those buttons, and you can open up the description there, and we'll put the link to this so you can go and get all of the details. There's a lot more in here that we just kind of barely touched on, and it's a lot. So HP had a whole lot to talk about at CES, but they're not the only ones. Lenovo had some stuff to say. Rich, what is Lenovo doing?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what Lenovo is announcing this week at CES. And I will say this right up front to the audience. Most of you are listening on audio right now, and you're going to have a difficult time understanding some of the products I'm about to describe to you, because there was a real emphasis this year from Lenovo on different, innovative, versatile form factors. And so if you're watching on video, if you've never watched on video before, this would be a great time to go to YouTube, find the video of this podcast if you want to see what we're talking about. And also, there are some pictures in the article I wrote. So on the show notes, you can kind of click through and see what I'm talking about a little bit here. But yeah, let's talk about some of the devices from Lenovo this year, beginning with the ThinkBook Plus Twist. Now, the ThinkBook line is a laptop line specifically designed for SMBs. And what they have done here is add a new model that has a sort of spinning hinge in the middle. So basically, you open up the display, and by spinning the hinge, you can kind of flip the display back and forth. You know, one possible on one side of that display, you get a 13.3-inch 2.8K OLED touchscreen. On the other side, you have a 12-inch e-ink screen. And folks who are familiar with the ThinkBook line will know that there have been ThinkBooks with an e-ink display on like the outside of the lid of the device for a long time. But basically, if you wanted to use it, you either had to close the laptop or spin it around so the keyboard was facing away from you. What they've done now is add the ability to just spin the display around if you want to work with the e-ink display while the keyboard is facing you, and go into what Lenovo calls typewriter mode. The other difference, the e-ink displays up until now have always been black and white. This one is color. Expected to arrive in June, prices starting at $1,649. Now, this one, you're really going to want to see the picture to kind of understand, because I've really never seen anything quite like it. It's called the Yoga Book 9i. And maybe one way to describe it is, you know, we're probably all familiar with these folding phones now. Imagine something more tablet-sized that folds kind of the same way. So the core device is two hinged 13.3-inch OLED touch displays. So you've got like essentially two 13.3-inch tablets that connect down the middle with a hinge. You can use one side, you know, you can look at different things in different sides of this. You can look at one thing and kind of span it across both of those. Then what they've done now, the other thing, you can use this in tent mode. You can use this in sort of clamshell mode. If you do use it in clamshell mode, either one of those 13.3-inch displays can become a sort of digital, like a soft keyboard, and it becomes a laptop that way. But the device also comes with a separate Bluetooth keyboard with a magnetic attachment that you could clip onto the back, and a stand, a folio stand. And the stand is set up such that you can either set up the two displays so that the hinge is running vertically down the middle, and you're looking at the devices that way, or you can rotate 90 degrees and have the two displays stacked one on top of the other with and have this sort of skinny, very tall display with two panels, and then the keyboard down at the bottom. And again, we'll have pictures about all this. So, I mean, a lot of different options in terms of how you set this thing up and how you use it, and under what circumstances. This is also scheduled to ship in June. Starting price is $2,099.99. A new tablet from Lenovo, the new Lenovo Tab Extreme. It's a 14.5-inch device, so this, you know, is in that sort of iPad Pro kind of zone. 14.5-inch tablet. This one, and they have really kind of optimized this around graphics and audio and so on. So 3K OLED display, 120 hertz refresh rate, a 1 million to 1 contrast ratio, and I forget what that according to Lenovo is a first, a most of its kind. Comes with 8 Dolby Atmos equipped JBL 4-channel speakers, 4 of which are woofers, 4 of which are tweeters. So pretty high end audio is certainly what they're aiming for there. And then this comes with a stand that attaches magnetically to the back of the device and can rotate. So you can stand the tablet up horizontally or vertically. There is a totally separate product sold separately. It won't be available everywhere on Earth. And they weren't, I don't know even for sure if it's available in North America. But in certain markets, you can also separately purchase a keyboard stand that allows you to add an external keyboard and a tiltable kind of display stand to the device as well. They're not saying when they're going to ship this. Sometime this year, this is arriving. It'll sell for $11.99.99 and up whenever it does shift. And then let's see, just some other things kind of quickly here. There's a new addition to the ThinkBook family as well for SMBs called the ThinkBook 16P Gen 4. Not a lot sort of noteworthy on the design front there, except for one particular thing. At the top of the display, they have what they call a magnetic pogo pin connector. It's basically a sort of plug-in connector that can accommodate a family of Lenovo Magic Bay accessories or peripherals. And right now there are 3 of those. So one of them is a webcam, no cables, no wires, folks. You just sort of snap this thing into place and it's connected to the laptop. It has a 270-degree hinge, so you can point the picture or the camera rather at yourself when you're on Zoom or Teams. You can also flip it back the other way if you want to look at something in front of you that you're demoing, for example. There is an LTE attachment you can kind of plug in if you need remote high-speed connectivity. There is a light that plugs in if again you're on Zoom and you need some light. You don't need to carry around an external lighting device with you or deal with cables or whatever. Just kind of snap this thing into place. So that was kind of interesting. Scheduled to reach market in May. It'll sell for $13.49 and up. I won't go. There was a bunch of gaming PCs. I won't go into the specifics. The interesting thing about a few of them, though, is that they are equipped with something new from Lenovo that they're calling the LAAI chip. It's a dedicated artificial intelligence chip built into the laptops, and basically it connects to a software-based machine learning algorithm or tool of some kind. It dynamically monitors your frame rate as you're playing the game and dynamically optimizes the game performance based on what it's seeing about your FPS moment to moment. So just an interesting kind of AI inflected addition to their gaming lineup.
A lot to go through. Lenovo's got quite a bit. You know, I don't even know where to start, Rich. Okay, let's just start with the top. With the twist. The more things change, the more things stay the same, right? So I want to take you back to basically 10 years ago. There was a ThinkPad called the ThinkPad Twist that basically had that exact same design. It didn't have the dual screen though. It was just an LCD screen that you could flip pivot it in the hinge there and flip it back and use it as a tablet. But the e-ink display in here is also new, and that's interesting. What are they saying that is the benefits of being able to choose between either screen? I'm not sure I see the benefit.
Battery on e-ink is going to be phenomenal. So if you're using it in typewriter mode, you should be able to theoretically go forever. Maybe not forever, but you should be able to go for any longer than you the machine will outlast you if you're typing. I think, remember I said in the last about the HPs, I said that for every 10 of these things that come out, one of them sticks around. Now, I'm not always right with what's going to stick around. Sometimes stuff sticks around that I don't understand. And sometimes things I think are great don't make it. I think this has the potential to be pretty great. Is this the right application? I sold a lot of those twists back 10 years ago, and we had a lot of issues as they aged with that mechanism, especially the people who really like to use it. Now, that said, that was 10 years ago. So maybe it's a lot better. Like maybe that's a lot better. I think that I could see, especially for students, professionals who want to avoid distraction. If you're sitting in a meeting, I'll be honest with you, I sit in a lot of meetings, board meetings and this and that. And oftentimes when they're in person, which isn't as much as it used to be, but when they were in person, sometimes I'd be the only guy with a laptop. People are still taking notes by hand, and having, your full thing going with everything is a little distracting. If I opened up an e-ink display, that's a little less distracting. And one of the other products, the Yoga 9i, it reminded me of the X1 Fold. And when the X1 Fold got announced at CES 2020, I was over the moon. I was super excited about this device, a full-on computer I could put in your pocket. And then it came out at like $4,000, and it had 8 gigs of RAM as a max. Even in 2020, a $4,000 laptop should have had more than 8 gigs of RAM. And it was soldered, so you couldn't upgrade it. And so I don't even know if I sold one. Like, it went nowhere. It was a great idea, but just the cost made it prohibitive. So I see now it's trickling down. The regular Lenovo line is lower priced than the Think Pad line. I'm excited. I'm hoping that, this technology, I think, has a lot of potential uses to be able to not have the keyboard there or use the Bluetooth one and have all that extra screen real estate. I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah, the 9i is kind of bonkers. I know we put the pictures up a couple times. It's very interesting. I could definitely see some advantage of having 2 displays built in. A lot of stuff to carry around, though.
Did you see the weight though? It's not actually, doesn't look that bad. Do you remember the old? It was a W series workstation. The W, I think it was a 570. Doesn't matter. The screen pulled out. It had a second screen that was inside, and you'd pull it out, but it weighed like 13 pounds.
Yeah, it's heavy.
So, I mean, if they're making a 3-4 pound laptop with 2 screens, that's pretty slick. I'm also concerned about battery life too. How does that affect battery life? All that extra draw. But again, things are much more efficient now. So it's exciting. It's exciting times.
It is. Yeah. This is some of the some more interesting design ideas that I've seen in quite a while. What do you think of the Tab Extreme? One thing that I think, Rich, that you didn't mention was that it uses it's not using an x86 processor. It's using a MediaTek Dimensity 9000 ARM chip. So did they say what this thing runs? Is this an Android tablet, or is this running like Windows 11 for ARM?
That is a great question. I probably have a data sheet here somewhere, if I could dig up and see. I don't know. Actually, just off the top of my head.
So Chad, I think if this thing runs Windows, what do you think? Do you think it'll be a successful product either way, or do you think...
So here's the problem. It's a chicken and the egg problem that Microsoft / the hardware people have right now. Apple went all in with the whole ARM architecture, but they control the operating system, they control the hardware, and then they got Microsoft on board with Microsoft Office and Adobe. They got all the key players on board. I wanted to really like that Microsoft Surface. Remember the Surface X, I think it was called? It came with an ARM processor. Microsoft had it rebranded as something, but it was awful as a usable device because the software wasn't there. And so it's come a long way. I actually keep a test machine with Windows ARM on it. If you live in Microsoft Office, Edge plus Microsoft Office, they're all full ARM supported. OneDrive has support, Edge has support, and at the end of the day, most people are using a web browser for the line of business apps, and then they're using, the Office applications. So with that said, it wouldn't take much for these products to be very successful if they're able to manage battery life and performance and whatnot. At the end of the day, though, if they come out with mediocre battery life and performance that's subpar to an x86 product, it's dead on arrival. And that's really, I think, we need to see an ARM processor on the Microsoft side, on the Intel camp, that has just amazing performance and battery life. The software is now there, and I really think there's an argument for that, but somebody's got to make it.
Yeah, that will be interesting to see how that one fares over the as it comes out and what it runs and what kind of stuff. Rich, did you find what it runs?
Android. Yep. Just
it's an Android tab. Okay, well that solves any of the Windows issues. But then it also is, it's Android tablets don't necessarily run all of the line of business stuff that business enterprises and businesses need. So that's going to be a shaky product. So knowing that it runs Android, what do you think, Chad?
Well, at the end of the day, I haven't seen mass success on any Android tablets if we're comparing it to iPads. If we ignore iPads and pretend they don't exist, we've seen some really nice tablets from Samsung that I've seen. I've got clients out in the field using today. And Motorola, the Zebra or Zebra, whatever you want. Motorola, their whole those whole tablets work great. So Lenovo putting out a good quality tablet like that, I could definitely see it getting adoption. Will it have iPad level success? Probably not. But is that how we're measuring things? Like, what's the measure of success, right?
Right. Yeah. So that will be interesting to see. I guess the other one I wanted to touch on real quick was another. We've seen this done before, and it was somewhat successful, but now it's kind of being repurposed, and that's this new Pogo pin connector for the ThinkPad. Lenovo owns Motorola, and I want to say it was 5 years ago, maybe a little less. Motorola had a line of phones that had like these magnetic attached accessories. I'm trying to remember what those were called. Rich, you remember what those are called? What they called that system? Moto Mods or something like that, right?
Yeah, I can't remember the term. I know what you're talking about.
But they had like five different accessories. There was like a speaker that you could just magnetically attach to the back of your phone, and then it was a speaker. Then a camera accessory that made it a little bit better camera. They had probably their more popular one was the battery pack. There was like a battery pack that you could magnetically attach to it, and then it like doubled the battery life of the phone. So we've seen Lenovo play with this magnetic accessories idea before. And it was somewhat successful with the Motorola phones, but I don't think it was super successful, primarily because the cost of the accessories were just super high. It's like it was really hard to justify spending $300 on a camera accessory attached to the back of the phone that didn't make the camera that much better. You know what I mean? And like the speaker was like $100. So I think I like this idea for the Pogo pin, but like, do you think you're going to see more than just a webcam connector or webcam? Or like, did they talk about the pricing of these accessories?
Maybe. Actually, probably. Let me see if I can dig that up. I mean, one thing I do know is that 3 accessories out of the gate, and there will be others as well. Let's see if I can quickly find that.
Just remind you guys of the old PCM CIA cards, except a modern twist on it. That's what I thought when I first read it. I was like, oh, good, we have PCM CIA cards back. We can have a bag full of cool accessories. I didn't see the 14.4 modem announced. I was a little disappointed about that. But they did have a nice 4K webcam, so I guess I'll have to accept that. I think I'm 100% with you though, Matt. I think a thing like this has huge potential, but if it's too expensive, there's the proprietary aspect. You're locked into the ecosystem. And if Lenovo does a good job of, even if it doesn't sell well in the first generation, if they keep it around for a few generations, that seems to be the magic trick. The Lenovo Tiny? So you familiar with the Tiny form factor? So they kept those monitors the same for I don't even know how many years now. There's a slight bit of a tightness on the first generation monitors with a brand new Tiny, but you can still get it to work. I think that was phenomenal because it's given us the power to really get mass adoption.
Yeah, longevity is super important. That's one of the reasons why PCM CIA was so successful, is because it was a standard, it stayed around, it was supported, and it was used for a very, very long time. So I agree. I think if Lenovo is going to go down that road with this magnetic pin, like they need to not add it just to one laptop, right? They need to start adding it to all of their laptops and have a wide variety of different accessories that work with it. But again, it, like you said, Chad, it comes down to price. If that Magic Bay Light, right, is $199, no one's going to buy it, right? So it really has to be affordable, right? And make sense, because if someone wants to add a better webcam to their laptop, they could add a 4K webcam from Logitech for $199, but if their camera is $399, no one's going to go with it. Right.
If it's the same price, I can even see it doing well at the same price, because you're going to have that convenience of not wasting a port, which I think is important on modern laptops. There's not nearly enough ports. But yeah, the other thing, if you know, the big difference though between this and PCMCIA was that PCMCIA was across the industry, and so everyone had it on all the laptops. And is Lenovo going to be able to get HP or Dell to want to adopt this? They're probably going to want to charge them a bunch of licensing fees and everything else. So I don't know. I still think it could be successful if, like you said, if they just put it across the board, you know, the enterprise laptops, the consumer laptops, the gaming laptops. Who doesn't need a good quality webcam? Or I think you mentioned speakers. I think that'd be a great one too. A little sound bar or something.
Yeah. The only other thing I thought of that is kind of a hindrance on this is like, well, the PocoPin connector, you can add a device. Like, what if you wanted to use your light and the webcam at the same time? Like, does it support that?
Bandwidth is going to be an issue too. Like, you know, if you look at USB-C or Thunderbolt 4, it's 40 gigabit per second. You can daisy chain the heck out of that. What's this? I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
Yeah. I don't. Rich, did they talk about any pricing? Did you have a chance to look at that?
I did look it up. They did not announce pricing. There was a reference in there to bundling. They weren't specific about that, so there might be SKUs that kind of come with some combination of these devices, but they didn't talk about how much they're charging.
They've been doing that with the monitors. We've been seeing on the enterprise side, the business side, the monitors have been coming bundled with the new webcams. I don't know when I don't know if that was probably old news to you guys, but they have the webcams that are modular with the new monitors. And yeah, there's SKUs with and without. And I'll tell you from my side, I recently sold one of the 40-inch Lenovo ultra wides, and it was $10 cheaper to order it with the webcam than without. So
go figure, right?
I'm just saying.
That's a
good way to get adoption is all I'm saying.
Totally. That's funny. Well, there's a lot here. Again, we could probably talk about Lenovo stuff all day long. A lot here to check out. There's a lot more in this article to go read and look at, and links that you can go and check out. So go and give those a look and check out some more of the Lenovo stuff. I think we had one more story we wanted to talk about, Rich, and that was the secrets of cross-selling.
Yeah, so this is an article from the December issue of our monthly magazine over here at ChannelPro. And, you know, it's interesting when we sort of put it up onto the editorial calendar. The idea was that, you know, everybody should be cross-selling. And so let's provide some tips, some advice on how to be more effective at cross-selling. But, you know, the freelancer, the writer who created this article for us also asked the various sales experts she spoke with, how much cross-selling does the average channel pro do? How disciplined are they about that? And it was interesting that there's not as much cross-selling going on out there as you would kind of think. And one of the people she spoke to is a sales expert, well known to Matt and myself, named Gil Cargill. He's spoken at our events before. Very, very interesting, experienced guy. And he said in his experience working with MSPs, if somebody wants to generate more revenue, get more sales going, their first thought, the default thought is, I need to hire another salesperson. I need to, you know, spend more money on marketing. Whereas really the low-hanging fruit, all those things, both those things could be great ideas for your business. But the first thing to look for is that opportunity to cross-sell to the customers you already have, because that is always going to be less expensive. It's going to go faster. It's going to be easier. It's going to require less effort. So you really do need to be kind of looking for every cross-sell opportunity available to you out there. Now, Gil also kind of emphasized you don't want to be the obnoxious tech person who is constantly selling everything. Every cross-sell that you recommend has to provide real value to the customer. But there are probably plenty of opportunities to do that. And another sales expert who has written for us before, quoted in the story, is named James Kernan from Kernan Consulting. And he talked about an exercise that I've seen other sales experts talk about, which is like a great starting point for making cross-selling a bigger part of your life, which is just create a spreadsheet, have all your customers down one axis and all of the services that you offer and promote on your website on the other axis, and just start making checks, X's, whatever, everywhere, so that you can see I've got these 12 services and this customer is using 6 of them. So these other 6 are potentially cross-sell opportunities, assuming the customer would get some value from these other 6. That's what I want to talk about with this person the next time that I sit down with them. So some of, in terms of when you do cross-selling, one opportunity to do that is at the quarterly or semi-annual or whatever it is that you prefer business reviews that you should be doing with all of your clients, is to, talk to the customer about what's new, what's changed, what are the pain points, what kind of growth opportunities do they see, and then look for opportunities to cross-sell some technology to them on top of what they're already doing that's going to help them be more successful that way. Obviously, if you have sold somebody something new, look for all the cross-sell opportunities there as well. So Gil, for example, was saying you sell somebody a new cloud application, a new software application, data migration, or configuration, all the sort of fairly obvious stuff that is required to get some use out of this product that you've bought, training, right? All of this is cross-sell opportunities that you should be looking for every time you sell something. There's some other good specific advice here from other experts. You can read. I encourage you, in fact, to go ahead and read the whole story. But just some good opportunities that maybe a surprising portion of the audience out there isn't taking advantage of fully right now, to increase deal size and land new deals with your existing customer base.
It's a great opportunity to throw it over to you and kind of get your experience with cross-selling. Do you try to cross-sell your customers a lot? What are some of the things that you've learned that works and doesn't work?
Yeah, absolutely. When I read that article, I was really pleased to see at the end there where Gil did mention to avoid over cross-selling. One of the things is you have to remember you're selling for the customer's benefit, not yours. Obviously we'd like to sell all of our services to everybody all the time and maximize, revenue generation. But at the end of the day, that's not really in all customers' best interests. So you need to align what you're selling with their business goals, their objectives. If you have a customer that's very sensitive about security, maybe they had a scare or a recent issue, it's a great opportunity to review all of the security services you're offering them as part of maybe your managed IT services or a la carte, however you're doing it. And it'd be a great opportunity to bring up those, hey, you only have regular AV. How about we migrate you to our EDR, MDR platform, that kind of thing. The one thing I would caution people on that, I've fallen victim to myself, and that is that you start a conversation with a customer where you had this one idea, but you didn't think through the next few steps, and you end up in this thing where, we could also, and you end up in this sort of horrible thing where you just feel like you're just trying to add on all these things. It's not the intent, but it comes out really lumpy. So it's really important to, before you meet with the customer, to think about everything you know about their operation, everything they're doing, they have been doing, and then build out. I like the access thing you talked about there, Rich, where you have all your services and what they currently have, and maybe identify, the ones, maybe 2 or 3, whatever you think that they need, and then start the conversation with that and just stick to it. Try not to let it just kind of flow off into all these other things, or you'll end up talking about everything and getting nothing done.
Yeah, very, very good advice there. There's a lot in the story. So I think, Rich, in the interest of time, we'll send everybody here to this story to kind of read through all of the details. And it's a really good article. I encourage folks to go check it out. So make sure you open up the description area on your phone or the description area on YouTube if you're watching there, and go and check those out. So with that, we are going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to be speaking with CJ Arlotta. He's the managing member of CJ Media Solutions, and we're going to talk about PR for MSPs. It's going to be a really interesting article, or really interesting interview. Pardon me. Stick around. We will be right back. Are you an MSP who is recommending Dell hardware to your end users? If so, then you'll want to check out the Dell Expert Network. The new Dell Expert Network program is a rewards and incentives program designed for service-focused MSPs who are supporting the small business market. This program is designed to deliver value and save time for MSPs who are recommending their end users to purchase Dell hardware. Currently, Dell Expert Network customers get an additional 3% back in Dell rewards when they buy Microsoft servers. Check out the Dell Expert Network today. And welcome back to our part 2 here of ChannelPro Weekly. This is our awesome interview segment, and we got a great interview lined up for you today. So our interview guest has been a communications professional for nearly 15 years. He founded CJ Media Solutions, a B2B PR firm, in 2018. Since then, him and his team have been providing media relations, content writing, ghostwriting, executive thought leadership, and crisis communication services to hospitality and technology companies. Please welcome the owner of that, CJ Arlotta. Welcome, CJ.
Thanks for having me, guys. Good to see everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Welcome, a good 2023. Did you ring in the new year with a big party or something?
No, actually, my girlfriend and I decided to stay in this year. We did the same thing last year because she ended up getting COVID. So we stayed in, and we decided it'd be a good thing to stay in again and just enjoy ourselves and bring in the new year together. So
Nothing
how about you
wrong
guys?
with that. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's always good to have a little downtime and not go out and try to find some massive crazy party.
I agree.
To attend.
I agree. It's great to be home.
Yeah, for sure. So CJ, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and a little bit more about your PR firm?
Sure. So I'm CJ Arlotta. I've been a communications professional, like you said, for over a decade. I started out in journalism, covered the IT channel for several years. About a few years ago, I branched out, started my own PR firm, and I have clients in the IT channel as well as the hospitality space, where I used to be a journalist as well. So that's what we've been doing for the past several years and helping people get their message out.
So elaborate on that a little bit more. A lot of people may not know what PR firms do completely for their clients. What are some of the things that you do for your clients?
Yeah, so I like to tell people that we really manage relationships, right? So many people think about public relations and they think about the media relations component of it when it's so much more. Yes, the media relations component is a huge part, and one of the main reasons why people will hire a PR agency to get their message out with the media and manage those relationships. But it's more than that, in the sense that we're managing relationships potentially with your customers, managing relationships with other stakeholders. They could be members of the community, and even further down the road than that. So it's really about managing those relationships, ensuring the message you want to get out there is received in the correct way to the various stakeholders.
So, the origin of this conversation, CJ, goes back to something that you kind of proposed to me, and just, by the by, folks, this is PR genius at work, right? He reached out to a media guy, he made a pitch, and it worked.
That's right.
He's on the show. But what you said, CJ, was, and I'm adding a little bit to what you said, but I mean, every vendor in the industry has a PR person, a PR agency. Like, the vendors understand public relations and the importance of that. But our readers at ChannelPro, the MSPs, the VARs, the Channel Pros, they don't necessarily think about that as something that can be, should be part of their world as well, whether or not they actually they're paying someone to do that for them. And we can get into that a little bit too. But I mean, what is the value of PR? What's the ROI in terms of time or money for the folks in our audience right now around PR?
It's really about getting your name out. I always say, for PR folks, it's who we know. But for everybody else, it's about who knows you. And if you're not out there promoting yourself, customers aren't going to know about you. If you're not reaching out to journalists, people in your industry aren't going to know about you and publish you in their publications. So with PR, you're ensuring you're working with people and managing those relationships to get your messaging out there, to potentially line yourself up to acquire new business down the road, and share your knowledge with people, right? When you're working with prospects and you're trying to acquire new business, you want to show them that you know what you're talking about, and you want to show that thought leadership. You're expert in your space, in your industry. And so one of the ways to do that, going back to the media relations example, and just like we were talking about before with journalists, is working with journalists to get your name out there, get your name in publications, get bylined opportunities, so that when you're speaking with prospects or customers, you can show them, hey, I know that topic we were talking about, we talked a little bit about it during our initial conversation, but I wrote, an article, a byline article with ChannelPro. Here it is. You should check it on out. it really speaks volumes to customers, knowing that you know exactly what you're talking about, and you're following up with them and showing your expertise.
Now, at some point in the conversation, I want to get back to the idea of, build or buy, if you will, the option to hire somebody who is experienced and professional to do this, or to kind of do it on their own, folks in the audience. But let's start there with doing it on your own. I assume, even if you don't have the budget or aren't willing to make the budget to hire a PR professional, you can still do PR.
Of course. And if you don't have that budget, you may want to start there. And especially if you have some additional time to work on it, you can do that. You can start. What I always suggest to people before you even begin reaching out to any stakeholders is really understanding who you are and what your business is about, what you offer, what you can provide value to, what you're an expert in, and how you want to represent yourself. And some of the best ways to really do that I recommend to executives is sitting down and kind of just gathering your thoughts together, figuring out who you want to be, what your company want to be about. And I know that this seems that it can take a lot of time on your end, especially when there's so many other things going on as a business owner. But if you're going to do it yourself, you have to really make sure that you're getting your messaging right before reaching out to the various stakeholders.
And my understanding actually is that, I mean, that is one of the services that a PR person, if somebody listening or watching does hire a PR person, that's one of the things a PR person can do, is sort of pull those ideas and insights and thoughts out of the executive and help them hone that message, that value proposition into something that's concise and powerful, because you folks in PR are communications experts.
That's correct. And, having been a former journalist, I know when I reach out to another journalist, I know that type of messaging, what you guys are looking for. And oftentimes when I first meet with executives, I like to interview them. And I try to interview executives on a monthly basis to figure out what exactly they want to talk about, what exactly they're messaging in. So I interview them just like this and try to gather their thoughts, ask them questions about potentially trending topics in the industry or their thoughts on this and that, to really kind of hone in on messaging and figure out what they can add value to in the particular industry they're in, or maybe a local community.
So, I mean, what you talk about is obviously going to be a very important aspect of PR. But as you said earlier on there, a lot of PR is who you know and who knows you. I mean, relationships have a lot to do with successful PR. Do you have any advice for folks in the audience about the right and wrong ways to maybe cultivate relationships with people in the media or elsewhere who could be useful to them in terms of getting their message out?
Yeah, I think the number one piece of advice I'd give is don't be selfish, right? Even when you're reaching out to journalists, provide value to them. Don't always be in it for yourself. I know I try with my clients. I try to reach out. Obviously, I'm reaching out to you guys in the media to try to get some press, but occasionally I may see something that I may try to, pitch somebody else who may not be a client, right? Because maybe I don't have a client in a particular industry or trend that's being covered, and so I'll know somebody out from having been on a potential, let's say, panel or meeting somebody at a conference, and I see that somebody might be the right person for a particular story you're working on, and I may connect you. So always look for how you can add value. Give more than you take. That's the number one advice that I recommend to people, no matter if you're pitching to the media, if you're in your community, if you're on LinkedIn or you're with customers. Educate people and provide value to them, and you'll get that in return.
So would you recommend finding where they live and then standing in their front yard and holding up a big boombox over your head, playing songs? With that?
Of course, absolutely. I've done it to Rich plenty of times. I think it's a very effective approach.
And I just never want to hear that song again. Try a different song and maybe it'll work.
But that's why I try to switch things up, Rich.
I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
As far as engaging with an MSP or any of your clients, what is a great starting point an entry point when you're thinking about hiring a PR firm? What types of services would be the first things you'd want to offload in working with someone like yourself?
Well, I think it depends on the PR firm, because every PR firm, I guess I would say, understand what the PR firm is offering. If you're looking for somebody to provide content writing and they don't provide content writing, obviously you got to move on to the next PR firm. But some of, I guess, the entry-level services that people do reach out to me about: content writing, media relations, because again, that's what most people think about when they think about public relations. They think about media relations. Some people, honestly, they don't know how to write a press release. They don't really understand PR. They don't understand how to interact with the media. And that's why they reach out to a PR agency. Some people understand they need it. They understand a little bit of it. They just don't have the time. So most of the time when people do reach out to me, those two initial services: content writing and media relations.
So you mentioned, I'm sorry, Chad, did I cut you off there?
Oh, I just was going to say thanks. That's a great entry point. I think we're thinking about.
You mentioned press releases, CJ, and let's talk about that a little bit, because that's one of those things that theoretically, at least, somebody in the audience can do on their own or hire somebody to do for them. I mean, are there any guidelines on when does it make sense to issue a press release? What kinds of things should you announce that way? And I mean, just how expensive is that as a sort of marketing and communications option?
Rich, I think you probably have a better thought on that than I do, since you're the one receiving the press releases, right? But I always try to tell my clients, figure out if something is newsworthy. If it's something that the media is going to pick up on, just because it's newsworthy to you and your company doesn't mean it's newsworthy to the industry as a whole or the market that you're trying to target. Sometimes some announcements are better off just, putting together a blog post and posting on your company blog, or posting on LinkedIn and other social media channels. So when you're working on a press release, you want to make sure that it's newsworthy, that somebody is going to pick it up. You want to make sure it's interesting, but not too interesting, because like before, I wouldn't say not too interesting, but make sure it's clear and concise. Right. Sometimes, I know, Rich, you probably receive a lot of press releases with a lot of jargon and a lot of fluffy adjectives, but stick to the facts, be straight. Reporters want that. They want to know what's going on, and they want the straight facts. They don't want too much marketing material in your press releases. So when you send that out, after you get the press release done, figure out which reporters in the industry you can target. Sending out a mass email to a bunch of reporters you never made contact with and that aren't in a particular industry or don't cover that particular segment is the wrong way to go about it. Most websites now, you can go on their website, pull reporters off there if you don't have a media list, and really hone in on the reporters that you're looking to target. And that's one of the better ways to get a return on the press release that you're sending out.
CJ, you mentioned. Go ahead, Chad. Go ahead, Chad.
I just like to ask about a little bit more about the press releases themselves.
Yeah.
I have some colleagues that put out press releases for everything from, they hired a new employee to somebody got a promotion to they've launched a new product or this or that. Could you give some examples of specific IT press releases that seem to have a lot of impact and actually make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ones that you mentioned are good. They may not get a full story on a publication, but there are publications that will put together slideshows for new hires or new product offerings. So those are the ones you pointed out are some of the major ones. I mean, obviously, if there's a major acquisition or merger, something of that nature, those things are also big topics to cover.
CJ, you mentioned social media, and PR and social media seem to not be one and the same, but there seems to be a big blurry line between the two of them and that intersect in various ways. How do you manage PR versus social media, and what are the things that people need to think about when they're trying to think about how to get their messages out?
Some PR firms, it depends, because some PR firms offer social media marketing. We don't do social media marketing, but there are some PR firms who do. There are other marketing firms that provide it, and they don't provide social media. So it really depends. But I would say when it comes to social media, it is important to fall back on your communications plan and your messaging. You don't want to do anything that's out of character from your company. You want to stick to your company culture, from everything from your messaging to your tone to the topics you're going to cover. You always want to revert back to that messaging to make sure everything is uniform and nothing is really out of the sort or anything that's out of character.
Some of this goes back to the conversation we just had about press releases. But in terms, but this goes beyond press releases. This could just be any kind of media outreach or whatever. In terms of generating ideas, so I mean, there are obvious occasions when some kind of PR probably makes sense. We've acquired another company, we've launched a new service, something like that. But if you're just kind of trying to generate some brand awareness, get your name out there, but do it in a way that adds value for other people. I mean, what kinds of ideas, where should people be looking for ideas to generate some positive PR for themselves?
I think it goes back to what I said earlier. Well, before I go back to that, let me say, always be reading the publications, see what people are talking about. You never know when an idea is gonna come to mind. But I think it goes a lot back to what I was saying earlier. Really sit down and figure out your thoughts. I'm sure there are times throughout the day where you read an article, or you come up with an idea, or you meet with a customer or a prospect and you have a situation at your hands and you go, oh, I'm going to do this later on, or that's interesting, and you forget about it. Write it down. Keep a calendar, keep an Excel document, keep something up on your notepad or whatever works best for you, and keep generating those ideas. And at some point, you're going to have some great ideas that you can pitch to the media. And what you can do is, when you take those ideas, is that you can either pitch them potentially as a byline article. Maybe there's enough meat there to pitch to a journalist and say, hey, maybe this isn't a story that you guys will cover, but is it something that I can write about under a byline article? That's one way. Another way is reaching out to the media. If you don't have a press release and you find something interesting, send over a short email. If you were building those relationships, like I said you should be doing, if you build those relationships, you could send a short email over to a journalist and say, hey, I'm interested in speaking about this topic. Is this something that you're seeing at large? Is this something you'd be interested in talking with me about? I'd be happy to add value if it's of interest to you. And sometimes the reporter, like, Rich, will pass on the topic, or maybe they're interested, but not right now, or maybe they receive another pitch from another PR firm or another MSP and go, hey, maybe there's a bigger story here. So you don't always know what's going to hit, but if you find something that you think is of value, you're the expert in your industry. So if you find something that you think is insightful and can help others, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to the journalists and pitching them some of your potential story ideas, or how you can add value to stories they're working on.
What about frequency? So if you're going to reach out to journalists, and Rich and I, we are at the brand end of this. We get pitches all the time for stuff.
Yeah.
What is the right frequency? Like, is there? Do you want to limit how often you try to pitch something, or do you just pitch everything that you think you can pitch?
I think Rich was right, but we got to just stand outside of his home and just play a bunch of music to get his attention. Now, look, journalists, you guys are busy, right? So you guys get tons of emails, and sometimes you see emails right away and respond, and sometimes you don't. I mean, there are a lot of things going on. Your job isn't to read emails. You're writing stories too. You're speaking at conferences. You're doing a ton of different things. So it really depends on the reporter. We did a study on this, I think, a couple of years ago, and the frequency it really depended on the reporter. Some reporters like following up after a few days. Some journalists say, a couple of weeks. I like to, and it also depends on the news. If something's a little bit more timely, you'll probably follow up a little closer in time. I like to give a journalist a few days to a week on certain stories, because sometimes they miss it. I've had plenty of reporters reach back out to me and say, hey, thanks for popping this up to the top of my inbox. I definitely want to cover this, but I totally forgot about it because I was working on X, Y, and Z. So it really depends on the reporter, but I would say, you know, make sure you give it a few days to a week before you follow up. You shouldn't be following up, you know, after a couple of hours you send the pitch.
So I mean, we talked about reaching out to the media and preparing a press release and social media and so on. I mean, I assume you can correct me, but the best way to get your story, your message, whatever it is that you've decided you want to get out there, the best technique for doing that is to connect with a journalist and get them to cover it. But are there other techniques or tips you have for just getting your news noticed? I mean, you know, in terms of where a press release goes or social media, anything you can do to kind of maximize the reach of that PR time or money investment?
Yeah, again, it goes back to relationships and being active in your community. If you're not familiar with journalists, I suggest reaching out to them, looking at the publications. You guys are at conferences all the time. Try to meet with the journalists, sit down, explain how you can provide value to stories they're working on. Upload those news stories, those press releases to your LinkedIn account, social media channels, because so many people are probably following those as well. If you want to send it over the wire for wire distribution services, depends on the news. You may or may not want to do that because there are extra costs to that depending on the service you use. It can be anywhere from $800 to, you know, a couple thousands of dollars depending on the size of the release, how many graphics you're going to use. That's another way to get your news out there at scale. But it really comes, Rich, you know, it really comes down to the relationships you have with journalists and providing value to them and providing something newsworthy that they're looking to cover and that their audience would like to hear about.
Do you have any suggestions in terms of the kinds of folks in the media that people in the audience should be cultivating relationships with, right? I mean, I assume you're looking for people whose content gets to a potential customer. Mm-hmm. But who is that? You know, and it's different. Like for your vendor clients, the answer is me, right? Because I'm writing about vendors all the time. But for an MSP, what kind of journalist should they be kind of looking to get to know?
Yeah, great question. So here, I mean, you have two different industries that an MSP should cover, right? So I would say reach out to people like you, Rich, and other journalists in the space. Obviously, first, reach out to Rich. But you know, you want to get your name out there in the industry so other MSPs are familiar with you, what you're doing. And like I said earlier, when you're speaking with prospects and customers, you can show them that you're a thought leader in your space. You're being covered in the industry. You're on the cover of certain magazines and things like that. That obviously helps. So you definitely want to stay involved with the trade publications, but you also want to be involved in the local publications where your potential customers are, right? That's really where a lot of that community engagement and those relationships matter. You're reaching out to them, let them know what you're doing. Are you working with chambers of commerce and working out with those individuals there and other business leaders in your communities, because that's where a lot of your customers are going to be, and you want to be out there and in front of them. Maybe a local publication by you needs some more advice on tech or, you know, cybersecurity or some other trending topic that's going on, you know, in that particular market. Provide some insight. Offer to write a byline article. Maybe you can get an article in there every other week or once a month, depending on your time and their interest. So I would say you definitely have to play in those two separate spaces to be successful.
As you were talking, it just kind of reminds me, and this is not an easy thing to do. I haven't heard this like, you know, dozens of times, but I've definitely met channel pros through the years who have succeeded in creating a relationship with someone in, say, or like at a news radio station or something like that. And they've just kind of seated themselves as the tech expert. So if there's something in the news that's going on that, you know, involves like a big prominent hack of some company, and something IT related in the news that neither the news radio person or their audience fully understands. It's like, well, who's my go-to on it? Who can I call up right now and get on the air? I mean, if you can find a way to be that person for anyone, radio, newspaper, etc., I assume that's kind of a good role to get.
Absolutely. It goes back to what I said earlier about who knows you. If you're making these relationships and in your community and you advertise yourself or you communicate with people what you do and how you can add value, when something like that comes up, they're going to think of you. Even if you send a short email, like I said earlier, to one of the journalists at your local publications or radio stations, or they will, when they need a story, when they need somebody to quote on for a particular story, or they need some insights, they're going to reach out to you. They may not right away, but the key is having that long-term relationship. You should be in it when it comes to public relations. You're in it for the long term. So while you might not get a hit right away, a light bulb may come about at some point later on down the road, and where a journalist may reach out to you at a particular topic, and you might find an opportunity that you didn't expect.
So let's talk a little bit. We've kind of hinted at this at various points, but let's talk a little bit about when it makes sense for somebody in the audience right now to hire a PR person or a PR agency as opposed to a full-time employee, but to bring in professional help on PR as opposed to doing it on their own. Like how big a company do you have to be to consider that? When does it make sense? How does it even get priced? How do you get paid for the kinds of work you do?
Yeah, PR agencies, they charge differently. Some charge hourly, some charge monthly retainers. As far as when you should hire a PR firm, there are two things. You don't know much about PR, and you got to hire somebody to help you out with it and help get your message out there. Or you just don't have the time to do it. You know it's valuable. It's just an extension of your business. If you hired a marketing firm, you got them doing marketing. If you need a PR firm to handle public relations, you just don't have the time to do it. That's when it would be best for you to hire an outside expert to help you out in your business.
So as somebody who gets approached by PR people on a regular basis, let's say, I can attest that there are people in the industry out there like you who really know what they're doing, and a lot in the industry who really don't. So if somebody makes the decision that I'm ready to begin working with a PR person or agency, I mean, any advice in terms of how to evaluate that resource? What kinds of questions to ask, things to look for?
Yeah, I mean, number one, do you have any previous experience, and do you have any previous experience in the industry you're in? I mentioned to you earlier, the majority of our clients are either in the IT channel vendors, or they're in the hospitality space. Why? Because I was a journalist in both of those industries, so it makes sense. I'm familiar with both industries. I've made contacts in both industries, so I try to stay in my lanes when it comes to that. So see if you can find a PR agency that has that's specialized in the area you're looking to get your message out there. Find out if they know reporters. Reach out to the reporters in the industry. If you know any, if you're at conferences, ask around, see if they're familiar with that particular PR agency. If they don't know who that individual is, they may not be the right partner for you.
Very interesting. Chad, I want to give you one opportunity to ask any questions that you might have.
No, I think really we've covered a lot of this. The real thing for me was the entry point, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the content writing. I think a lot of IT providers, they know what they do, and they can say it well technically, but actually massaging into that language that really resonates and is going to look good in the publication. I think that's huge. The only other thing I would ask is, so you've hired a PR firm, they're helping you with content management, and they're kind of taking you to the next step. Where would you go after that? What's the end goal?
Well, it would depend on what they're looking for. If they're working on content writing and they need help with writing blog posts or byline opportunities, the next step might be to help them out with public relations, to help them get their message out there and further, and help connect them with the journalists in their industry, or work with them in local markets. That kind of goes, hand in hand. So I've seen that to really be the next step if you're going from the content writing to the media relations, and then building up from there. Depends how large you are of an organization or your needs are.
And then one follow-up to that is, if you're an MSP that's focusing on a certain vertical, if you're focused on accountants or lawyers or something like that, what would be the best way to engage someone like yourself? You talked about you staying in your lane and knowing hospitality and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Would it be better to find a PR firm in the legal field and then engage with them to get your IT message across? Or would it be better to work with an IT-focused one and have them get the message out to the legal field?
Great question. If you can find somebody who specializes in that type of content, if you're looking to reach out to attorneys, then I would recommend try to reach out to somebody like that. They obviously have to have some sort of a tech background to understand. Again, you're really pitching not necessarily the technology, but the business solutions, and the technology obviously complements that. So you need somebody with somewhat of an IT background. But if you can find a PR firm that has a background in both, or is familiar with both at least, that's probably your best bet. Look, having been a journalist, I've covered various industries, the IT channel, I've been in healthcare, hospitality, and some other industries. So we learn to kind of adapt and learn industries as we go. But if you're able to find somebody who knows a little bit of both, that'd probably be your best route.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, very interesting stuff. Well, CJ, thanks so much for coming on and talking to us. It's a really fascinating topic we haven't really talked a whole lot about on the show before, so it's really interesting, and I'm sure everybody got a lot out of it. If anybody listening or watching wanted to learn more about you and learn more about your firm, maybe look to work with you, where can they go? How can they find you?
Yeah, they can visit us at cjmediasolutionsllc.com or email me at cj@cjmediasolutionsllc.com.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Very interesting stuff. And hopefully when we have more PR related kind of things going on here that we need to talk about, we'll hopefully get you back on. So thanks again. With that, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Chad will be with us on the other side. We'll wrap up the show, have a little bit of fun. You never know what we're going to do in part 3. That's why everybody needs to stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back now with part 3 of this episode of ChannelPro Weekly. Awesome interview with CJ Arlotta. And Rich, what we were talking about, we haven't really talked a lot about PR on the show much at all in this show's history. So this is kind of really interesting. It's a topic that we really haven't discussed. I haven't really put a lot of thought into, and something that a lot of MSPs probably haven't put a lot of thought into either. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. I don't know. But I'm sure that whoever's listening or watching is thinking about it now. What did you think of that interview? What did you take away from it?
Well, so first of all, not only have we not talked about PR before on the podcast, but it's just a topic we haven't really written about very much at ChannelPro, and that's part of why I was looking forward to having CJ on the show. As we certainly talk about sales and marketing a lot, but this is a dimension of marketing that for MSPs that just doesn't get a lot of coverage by us or anyone else. One note that I didn't get a chance to work into the conversation that I think is important to sort of emphasize goes right back to something that Chad was saying just before we went into the interview, when we were talking about cross-selling. And he said, you got to remember that you're doing this for the customer's benefit, not for your benefit. And I would just say, as somebody who's on the receiving end of PR pitches a lot, basically, you need to have the same mindset. This is essentially a sales exercise. When you are trying to land content in some media outlet, you are selling something, and your customer is me in this case, is the reporter, the media person, and you need to think of it that way. And so you don't, just as you wouldn't go into a customer's office and say, let's talk about how you can spend money with me. It's, you want to understand their business. Let's talk about how I can help you be more successful in your business. Same thing when you're cultivating a relationship with the media. Think of this very much as a sales conversation. You want to understand, and CJ did a great job of talking about this. You want to understand what this person's needs are, what their interests are. You want to look for opportunities to help them be more successful in their job. And then you want to, get better and better over time at presenting your message or your story or whatever it is in the most compelling, clear, interesting way for somebody who, like your end user customers, maybe isn't really tech focused. So it's actually in a lot of ways very similar to selling services to SMBs.
Yeah, very interesting. Chad, what did you take away from that interview?
Yeah, I thought it was great because it touches on some things that are often neglected. There's some basics that we all kind of do when we're dealing with trying to promote ourselves and our brand and our business in general. But like some of the services he was talking about, like the copywriting is a great example. There's a lot of boilerplate out there. There's some vendors that some of the listeners are probably using. They provide this as sort of a canned aggregate service. But one of the things about engaging a PR guys, you can get that custom content, you can get that stuff written for you, and more focused on the messaging you're trying to get across. So yeah, I thought it was great, and it's definitely something you don't think about unless it's put in front of you. So I enjoyed that interview quite a bit.
That's good, and it's good you're back out of your echo chamber now, so now we can understand you clearly as well.
Hopefully you enjoyed the view, at least behind me. It was a nice wall behind me.
It's a cool room, man. I mean, you're right though. It is a big cylinder.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So pretty neat stuff. Well, we are at the point of the show where we usually like to have a little fun. We've been playing a lot of verses. We haven't done a lot of 5 questions lately, but we're gonna go back to the past. And we're gonna play a round of 5 questions just because we haven't done it in a while. So for those who are maybe newer to the show or listening or haven't seen us play this particular game yet, 5 questions is a game that we've been doing for a long time. The gist is that Rich and I have to come up with 5 questions. We'll go back and forth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 off the top of our head. We cannot think of them in advance, and we'll ask Chad these questions and just to learn a little bit more about him and learn more about his interests. And they're going to be off topic and sometimes crazy. So Chad, you ready?
Absolutely.
All right, Rich, question number 1 to you.
So we were talking off the air about the fact, so we discussed hardware a great deal on the show today, and you were kind of talking, Chad, about how you like to go out and just get the state-of-the-art, coolest, newest kinds of devices out there and use them for work. Let's limit it, let's say, to peripherals. What is the peripheral that you have and use on a regular basis right now that you just can't live without?
I really like this. I don't know if it'll show up on the camera here, but I really like this vertical Logitech MX mouse. It's ergonomic, and so when you hold it, you actually, again, I know if anyone watching can see me holding it here, it keeps your wrist at a certain angle, and I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, but I actually liked it enough that I actually bought my wife the smaller version, and she's now using that. So I think sometimes this isn't the most expensive. It's not cheap, but this isn't the most expensive thing in the world. But quality of life is huge for me. And we're all on our computers a lot. So yeah, definitely this mouse right now.
Yeah, having a good mouse is important. I've talked to mine. I use a MX. This is an MX Master 2. And you got to have a good mouse.
That was my old mouse
all day. What's
that? That was my old mouse. And then this vertical one, you might want to give this one a shot. It's
yeah. Really does the vertical one have the free spinning wheel?
Yep.
Oh, okay, I might have.
Well, it's got
it automatic?
It clicks, but it's all customizable in the software, right? I actually like the tactile clicking of the wheel, not you push the button, right, and then you spin it. But
see, I like the Master 2 because it's automatic, so it's in click mode until you really give it a good run, and then it'll automatically flip over to the free flow. I got used to that with my old MX. What was the first? I can't remember the name of the first mouse. I had it on the show once at one point.
Just MX Master, I think, was the first one.
It was it was a different name. The one that was a long time ago. The first mouse that had it. I can't remember what it was, but it was like I got used to it then, and I had that mouse for years and years and years, and I couldn't.
I'm telling you, going from the I don't know if you use multiple computers with your mouse too. This has the 1, 2, 3 on the bottom. Anyway, I didn't think it was. I thought it was. I was worried because I really like the mouse you have there. I have 2 of those actually, one at the office and one here. I added this one, and I don't think I'm going back.
Yeah, awesome stuff. All right, so sorry, I'm getting distracted talking about peripherals. Question number 2. So you mentioned you have a toddler. I'm sure you are engaging in toddler activities and watching toddler shows. What is a toddler show that you have watched with your toddler that you have secretly liked?
Oh, I like Peppa Pig. Daddy Pig is amazing. And all of the I don't know if you remember growing up, a lot of the cartoons had some really bad innuendo in them. And some of them were, really inappropriate. This is different, like the rabbits live above the foxes in like the foxhole. It's a hilarious show. I really enjoy Peppa Pig.
Peppa Pig. Rich, question number 3 to you.
So because I'm totally unoriginal whenever I'm playing this game with Canadians, I'll just ask you, what's your favorite Tim Hortons donut?
Tim Hortons donut, a maple dip donut. If any Canadian says anything without maple in it, I'm going to deport them. That's
maple. That's awesome. All right, question number 4. I know that you are into cycling, but you have a really crazy setup for that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, actually, me and my wife, I have like a side-by-side setup for both of us. So we have indoor cycling. We play a game called Zwift, and it's like a MMO, if anyone's familiar with like World of Warcraft type of things. It's like that, except you ride your bike on real life in the game. And so there's races and group rides. I have a couple different trainers. The one is rollers, so you keep both wheels on and it feels more like riding on the road. And then we have the ones where you take the rear wheel off and you actually put it around a cassette that's on the trainer. The trainer communicates with Bluetooth and it measures the power you're putting down through the force you're putting into the wheels. And you wear a heart rate monitor so people know you're not sitting there with like a drill or something and cheating. You basically, all that data is fed into the game. And so you can you can see on screen your heart rate, the power you're putting down, and then it converts it into some virtual, the speed you're going and how far. There's all these achievements to make you feel like you're accomplishing something. And like I said, it's an MMO. So if you want to put on a headset and talk to people, I don't usually because it gets kind of gross with you're all sweaty. So I just talk to my wife usually, but it's great fun. Great fun.
That's really, really cool and really neat. I'll have to look up what that entails and what it's all about, but it sounds really interesting and neat. Rich, last question to you.
So we determined earlier on the show that you've got to travel further north than used to be the case to get to snow in big amounts. But when snow is available to you, there's skiing, there's snowboarding, there's snowshoeing, snowmobiling. What's your favorite activity out in the snow?
Well, so I'll give you two answers. To answer your question specifically, I'm going to say skiing. I really enjoy skiing. However, I actually enjoy just spending time out in the yard. So my daughter, she likes to, run around and make snow angels and all that kind of stuff. And I absolutely love that. And the wintertime, all of the moisture is out of the trees. So it's my favorite time to do firewood and cut trees up and that sort of thing. This winter, whenever it gets wet, it's not as good because it's all mud. So once it's cold and hard, you can really have some fun out there in the bush.
Well, very interesting. Well, it's always good to learn a little bit more about our guests, and I want to say thanks for playing 5 questions and playing along with us. It was a lot of fun, very interesting. With that though, we are pretty much all out of time. But I know, Rich, we wanted to give you a chance to preview the week ahead. What's coming up?
Yeah, so just so folks know, this is one of our off weeks for the James Gaskin, in case you missed it, roundup, but we'll be back with our first of those for 2023 in a week's time. And we're kind of easing into the year here, so there's not a ton that's going to be coming up next week, but I can say, without getting meaningfully specific, there's some interesting hardware news. If I was to get even a little specific in terms of what kind of hardware, there's some more hardware news coming in the first part of next week, and I'm pretty sure we'll wind up talking about it on the next episode of the podcast.
Ooh, sounds like fun. I always like talking about hardware. That sounds like fun to me. Chad, the MX Revolution, that was the name of the first Logitech mouse that had the free spinning wheel. I had to go back, and we talked about it on the podcast way back. You have to go back to episode 28 if you want to hear more about that particular mouse. That's an audio only episode, so go and check that out if you like. So before we say goodbye, Rich, our event season is already right on the horizon. We have our first virtual event coming up. Can you tell folks about that real quick?
Yeah. On January 18th, this month, we're doing our first of 4 virtual events that we'll be doing this year. This is our first managed services and cloud online summit. We're going to be providing some really great specific tips about managing technicians, some great tips around cloud computing cost control. We have a presentation from Jennifer Bleem, who used to work for security vendors. She's a consultant now to MSPs, and she's going to do a really interesting talk for us around selling tech without speaking geek, as she puts it. This is the number one trap that channel pros tend to fall into. So lots of great stuff. We also are going to be doing 8 different in-person SMB forum events this year. The first of those is February 1st and 2nd in Dallas. I won't kind of dive into all the content there, but you can learn about and register for both of those events and a whole bunch of other events we're doing this year at events.channelpronetwork.com.
Yep, and I can make that a little bit easier. I'll throw a graphic up on the screen. It's got a QR code for those who are watching on YouTube. If you are not watching on YouTube, it's channelproforum.com/2023, I believe. Will take you right to the registration. Use promo code CP Weekly. That will get you in the door for free. So you can join us there and make sure that you do that. You're going to get a lot out of it, and they're great events. And make sure you register for our virtual event next week. Anybody can go. It's pretty much unlimited attendance. So go and get a lot out of that, because there's going to be a lot of great stuff that we're going to talk about there as well. So go and check that out. Big thanks to Chad Kempt for coming on and joining us this week. Owner of Fast Computers. Chad, did you have a good time with us?
Absolutely. I love hanging out with you guys. It's always a good time.
Always great to have you. And for those who wanted to learn more about you, connect with you, get to know you, where can they go? How can they find you?
Yeah, I have social media accounts, but I'm not super active. If anyone wants to reach out to me directly, chad@fastcomputers.ca. And if you just want to learn more about the company, www.fastcomputers.ca.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and being with us. And we hope to have you back down the road. Folks, until then, go to channelpronetwork.com. Make sure you set it as your homepage. Go there every day. Sorry, I'm getting distracted because someone's trying to message me on the side here. So sorry about that. Yeah, go and set it as your homepage. Go there each and every day. Subscribe to the ChannelPro Weekly podcast everywhere it is. We're on YouTube and Stitcher. If you go to subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell, hit the like button, and do that. And of course, with that, we got a lot coming up ahead in 2023. So make sure you tune in every week. And until next week, we'll see you then. Take care.